Welcome back. We're going to talk about the purl stitch. But before that, let's talk about what we have right now. So if you've been working on your little piece of magic here, it should look something like this. If it's super loose, like mine are kind of tight, even stitches, if it's really, really loose, what you can do when you put the yarn on your hand is wrap it around your pinky once. That'll keep the yarn a bit tighter and it'll be a little bit easier for you to make tight, even stitches. Or maybe you want to keep them loose. It looks great for certain patterns, so whatever you'd like to do. Now let's talk about the rows we have here. First off, this bottom row here is the cast on. And most patterns don't count that as a row, some of them do. If they do, they usually say so. If not, then don't count that as the first row. It would be this smooth row right here, that would be the first row. And just a sec, let me get a pointer here. This bumpy part would be row 2. Right, this bumpy part is row 2. This smooth, if you kind of stretch it, you can see this smooth part in between the bumps is row 3. So we go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So what this is, this alternating smooth and bumpy pattern is called garter stitch. And we should talk about the word stitch, by the way. So stitch can mean a couple different things in knitting. It can mean these little loops on the needle. It can also mean the overall pattern, the overall texture that it makes in the fabric. And in this case, it makes kind of these alternating bumpy, smooth rows. And that's garter stitch. And then these are also stitches. It's confusing, I know. But anyway, that's kind of how it's used. They're used interchangeably in knitting. So now we're going to do purl. Alright, so I taught you to start out like this with the yarn in the back of the needle. When we do purl, so this is how to start out with knit. When you do purl, you're going to want the yarn in front of the needle right here like this. And you're gonna go into the stitch in the front. See, your working needle is gonna go on top of your stationary needle when you go in the stitch with purl. And you're not so much pulling the piece of yarn through, you're gonna be pushing. You'll see what I mean. Okay, I'm gonna try to get my thumb out of the way so you can see. So you're gonna kind of grab that little piece of yarn. You can use your pointer finger again to help you. And what you're going to do is you're going to push it through the stitch. And then you're going to slide it off. Just like that. And I'll show you again. Now you want to make sure the yarn is in front. So is your working needle. It is in front of the stationary needle this time. Okay, so you're going to kind of wrap the yarn kind of behind the needle so that it can push it through the stitch. So I know that was kind of confusing because I say yarn in front and then yarn behind. But okay, so you start out with the yarn in front and now you're going to move it in between the two needles. You can use your tip to push it through that stitch. And I use my thumbs to hold the other needle or other stitches in place so that they don't go sliding around. I love to use metal needles just because the stitches can slide so easily, makes me go faster, but that can be a disadvantage as well when they slide around like crazy, especially with if you're working with silk yarn, but I can't afford that, so it's not usually an issue. Alright, so push it through. So you may notice that the instructions for purl are the exact opposite as the ones for knit. And we'll get to that in a second, but right now I want you to practice the purl stitch until it looks really good. So we'll come back when we get to that point.